Picture a young man named Daniel, slumped on his couch in a dimly lit studio apartment. He'd been chasing after success day after day, straining every muscle in his mind to visualize the life he longed for. Yet every time he tried, he felt like he was pushing his luck further away, like trying to grab smoke between his fingers. Daniel grew anxious, heart pounding with a quiet desperation that felt impossible to shake. He was convinced that every single minute he wasn't grinding or pushing forward was a minute wasted, so he ran himself into the ground with restless nights and scattered days, waiting for some spark to appear, some sign that all his frantic effort meant something. But no spark came, and the silence left him haunted by the feeling that there must be another way. A way beyond the anxious striving, a path to actually letting life breathe on its own. Still, Daniel couldn't handle standing still. If his phone wasn't buzzing, or if he wasn't busy mapping out the next big move, he felt uneasy and guilty, as if stepping back would mean falling off some cosmic hamster wheel. It seemed like all he heard from others was work harder, push more, sleep less. He embraced that mantra with all his heart, yet every accomplishment felt hollow, temporary. He'd celebrate a small victory, then immediately panic about losing momentum and slipping back into mediocrity. The more he tried to clutch at success, the less it felt like it belonged to him. He'd lie awake at night, pulse hammering in his ears, eyes flicking between the ceiling and the floor, trapped in a vortex of ambition and fear. In those lonely hours before dawn, Daniel's mind spiraled. He worried about missed opportunities, about not measuring up, about how tomorrow would be just another test he might fail. He was stuck in a restless loop where the universe itself felt like an opponent to be beaten. It was exhausting. He questioned everything. Why did nothing feel truly fulfilling? Where was the calm, steady sense of well-being that everyone else seemed to have at least some of the time? He walked around the city with a tense jaw and a tight chest, so caught up in his own mental chatter that he hardly noticed the world around him. He was desperate for a release, a chance to do things differently. After a while, Daniel grew curious about all these spiritual teachers and philosophers who promised deeper truths. One name kept popping up in random conversations, articles, and whispered references: Neville Goddard. At first, he brushed it off, thinking it was more self-help nonsense. But something inside him kept nudging him to dig a little deeper, so he began reading about Goddard's ideas on imagination, on how one's inner world shapes everything on the outside. Some said Goddard taught that you can manifest the life you desire by vividly imagining it first, aligning yourself with that vision, and then, strangely enough, doing nothing in the sense of releasing all that desperate effort. That concept stood in bold contrast to Daniel's entire approach. Wasn't it all about hustle and relentless willpower? Yet the more he read, the more he found an undeniable ring of truth in Goddard's teachings. Still, he was skeptical and carried that skepticism like a badge of honor. He told himself he'd try it out, but his mind was always looking for a hidden trick or reason to disregard it. The idea that there might be a universal flow that picks up your vision and shapes your circumstances seemed too easy, almost suspiciously so. But Daniel was also too exhausted to keep doing things the hard way. So he pressed on, reading story after story from people who claimed their lives were transformed. Often at the moment, they finally gave themselves permission to rest and let the universe do its thing. He decided to give it a shot. Late one evening, with the moon casting a lonely glow across his cluttered desk, he made a conscious effort to imagine his life as if all his big dreams had already come to pass. At first, he forced it, clenching his fists, straining, trying to push images into his mind like uploading files into a faulty computer. His impatience led to disappointment as usual. But then he recalled the idea that the real power lies in a calmer, more subtle state, almost half asleep, where the conscious mind loosens its grip. So, with eyes closed and his heart beating a little slower, he entered a gentle, floating stillness. He pictured himself living in a place where he felt genuinely at home, where the air around him carried a sense of peace, where he could watch the sunrise without the noise of worry trailing behind it. For a moment, he felt a lightness that he hadn't experienced before. It was fleeting, like a half-forgotten dream. But in that instant, he could taste the relief of simply believing everything was already in motion, that life was unfolding the way it needed to. Of course, as soon as he realized he was experiencing that calm, he tried to cling to it, and it slipped away like sand through his fingertips. He caught himself falling back into the old pattern of try harder. He wanted that feeling to continue, but the more he chased it, the more elusive it became. Frustrated, Daniel did exactly what he'd always done. He tried to fix his failure. He read more blog posts, more lectures, more stories from people claiming manifestation secrets. He scribbled furious notes, tested new affirmations, and listened to guided meditations, all to hunt down that fleeting, sweet sensation of letting go. The learning process itself felt like an uphill slog, draining his energy and motivation. He found himself doubting this entire journey. Maybe this was just some twisted version of the hustle, disguised under spiritual vocabulary. Then, almost by accident, he reread one of Neville Goddard's core statements. The moment you fully accept your imagined vision as reality, you can release it. Doing nothing isn't about being lazy or ignoring your responsibilities. It's about ceasing all the desperate force you've been applying. The so-called universe isn't separate from you. According to Goddard, it's the living echo of what you truly believe and feel within. Trying to force or manipulate that echo just muddles everything. Your job is to hold a clear, unwavering picture in your mind's eye, accept it as done, and then go about your day without overthinking, analyzing, or strangling your desire with doubt. Daniel sat back, letting that idea wash over him. He realized that every time he hammered at his dream with frantic energy, he was actually broadcasting the feeling that it wasn't real yet. He was telling his subconscious that his vision was still out of reach. By repeatedly declaring, "I need this," or "I must make this happen," he confirmed to himself that he didn't already have it. That subtle contradiction was fueling his sense of lack. Suddenly, it dawned on him that the true shift wouldn't be visible on the outside until it took root on the inside. Letting go wasn't a sign of laziness, but a mark of trust. Trust that once he set his intention, the wheels were already turning beneath the surface, as long as he didn't keep jamming them up with worry. He decided to experiment in a calm, smaller way. One night, before drifting off to sleep, he visualized a simple scenario in which he woke up feeling genuinely rested, enthusiastic, and reassured that life was flowing without his constant micromanagement. He vividly imagined the sunlight hitting his face in the morning, felt the rush of gratitude, let it sink into his very bones. Then he mentally said, "It is done," and simply allowed sleep to take him. He didn't journal about it, didn't set an alarm to check if it worked, and didn't comb through his mind for proof. Instead, he embraced a silent agreement with himself. "I've planted the seed. I'll let it grow." When morning came, Daniel found himself curiously unburdened. He wasn't jumping for joy, but there was an underlying ease. He went through the day, a little more present, a little less on edge. Interestingly, random coincidences, like small opportunities, helpful comments from strangers, or ideas popping into his head at exactly the right time, started cropping up. Not earth-shattering miracles, but unmistakable nudges that aligned with his intention. Each nudge felt like a sign that letting go was more powerful than anything he'd tried before. As the weeks went by, Daniel cultivated this practice more consistently. Whenever he found himself drowning in doubt or sliding back into obsessive planning, he paused, took a slow breath, and reminded himself, "It's already done within me. I don't have to force it. I can rest." That simple reassurance, repeated gently, began reshaping his mindset. And in that reshaping, his external world started matching the new, calmer internal one. Without the frantic tension, his conversations felt less strained, and people seemed to respond to his grounded energy. He caught new opportunities that appeared almost effortlessly, as if they were always there, but invisible to his frantic eyes before. Now, this isn't to say Daniel stopped working altogether. He still showed up to his job, pursued meaningful projects, and handled his day-to-day responsibilities. But something had fundamentally changed in his approach. He was no longer dragging around the weight of constant worry or feeling like the universe needed a wake-up call every 5 minutes. He embraced Goddard's principle that imagination creates reality, and so he worked on his imagination and emotional state. Then let it breathe, let it marinate, let it shape the tapestry of his life in its own natural rhythm. If there was a challenge, Daniel met it calmly by reaffirming his inner vision and trusting that every hurdle had a hidden doorway leading closer to what he'd already claimed in his mind. That, at its heart, is the magic of doing nothing. It's not about idleness. It's about releasing the desperate energy that tells the universe you don't believe your own desires are possible. Paradoxically, when you do nothing, you're signaling deep faith. You're stepping out of the way so the invisible gears of creation can turn. So how does this translate for you? Maybe you're someone who's tried everything: affirmations, vision boards, relentless hustle, endless positivity, and you still feel stuck. Or maybe you can see little glimmers of success, but it all feels like a delicate house of cards you have to guard every second. The big takeaway is that manifestation doesn't always require more sweat and grind. Sometimes the missing piece is allowing your dream to breathe without strangling it. Let your intentions go, just for a while. Whisper to yourself, "It's already here," and feel the sense of relief that flows from that inner certainty. Of course, none of this is a magic trick that spares you from ever taking action. Action still happens, but it emerges from a place of clarity instead of desperation. You're not moving through life with an "I must prove myself" mindset. Instead, your steps feel guided by a calm trust, almost as if an unseen hand is leading you to the right place at the right moment. In the end, what Daniel discovered through Neville Goddard's teachings is that the greatest leaps often occur when we remove our self-imposed roadblocks, our anxiety, our need to control every outcome, our fear that if we let go, everything will collapse. Letting go doesn't mean giving up on your dreams. It means you finally believe in them enough to stop obsessing. It's a bold declaration of faith in the power of your imagination and the creative force that underpins the universe itself. If you're hearing these words and a part of you is saying, "This can't be right, I have to keep struggling," ask yourself how that struggle has felt so far. Has it fed your soul or exhausted you? Is it leading you anywhere new or keeping you trapped in an endless spin cycle? Sometimes stepping back for a moment is what allows solutions to rise to the surface. Sometimes doing nothing is precisely the reset your mind needs to remember that you already hold the blueprint for the life you want, and the world around you is built to reflect it back if you let it. So maybe give this a try in your own quiet way tonight. Pick one thing, doesn't matter how big or small, that you'd love to see blossom in your life. Before sleep, close your eyes and let yourself live that scene in your mind, not as a distant goal, but as a present fact. Drink in the feelings, the sensations, the excitement, then softly tell yourself, it is done, and drift off. Tomorrow, resist the urge to poke it 1,000,000 times to see if it's growing. Just trust that the seed you've planted is alive. Go about your routine, do what's on your plate, and stay open to small shifts in your environment. You might be surprised at what shows up when you're not constantly scanning for proof or trying to brute force your destiny. I'd love to hear your perspective on this. Have you ever experienced that odd synchronicity when you stop fixating on an outcome? Drop your thoughts, experiences, or even your doubts in the comments. The conversation might be just the spark someone else needs, whether it's about that job you've dreamed of, the relationship you're longing for, or a creative endeavor you're dying to see flourish. Remember, once you've nurtured it in your imagination, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step aside and let life reveal how perfectly it can all come together.